It's time for a brand new episode of the Bakery Bears video show.
This is our lifestyle show featuring craft, baking, and a little bit of history.
We've got lots of projects to show and one of our special series to share.
What will we feature this time, and which of our projects will be our favourite?
Let's get on with the show and find out.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show, featuring probably the biggest ever pattern reveal in our history. Because this all stemmed from a few weeks ago. Kay was sat in bed pondering the mysteries of life.
As you do.
And the words which flowed from her mouth were, I wonder if I could do a crochet jelly roll. And it turns out that the answer is yes. Now, what makes this so incredibly exciting is this is Kay's first ever crochet design, isn't it?
Yes, touch wood, fingers crossed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Never done it before.
Completely spectacular.
Yeah, and it's something actually I wanted to do. I mean, I don't know if you're all aware of the Jelly Roll blanket, which I published, I think, about 4 years ago now.
Wow.
So this is the Jelly Roll blanket, and lots of you will have knit one of these. It's been probably my most popular pattern, and it's wonderful. I absolutely love it, and I'm just so thrilled that so many people have enjoyed knitting this. So it's always been on my mind, I'll be honest, since designing this, as to whether it would be possible to do a crocheted version. And it was just something that at the time, 4 years ago, I probably wouldn't have felt confident enough to try. But, 4 years down the line, and so I thought, do you know what, I'm going to give it a go. Just for whatever reason, a few weeks ago, I was inspired to try it, and I knew what stitch I wanted to use, what crochet stitch I wanted to use. It was more the joining, can I work out how to do the join as you go strip thing? Because that's how the Jelly Roll blanket is constructed. It's constructed in strips, and then you join each strip as you go. So in the case of the knitted one, as you knit across a row, you then join it to the strip, knit back. So I thought, can I do it? And after a lot of swatching, which I'll show you all the little swatches I've done as well, I think I've cracked it.
It is totally spectacular. I can't begin to tell you how exciting it is when Kay's in the midst of creating something, because it's totally all encompassing. It has to be doing it at the whole time, and it's such a vibrant environment to be in. And it's happened fairly often, but not it's not. This is one of those moments, there's been others through the years there's highlight patterns which are whoa,
there has been others that I've really, really been obsessed with. It's usually blankets, I'll be honest,
oh my goodness.
Or blankets and a couple of pairs of socks, of my favourite sort of designs.
Stitch in Time, absolutely. Yeah,
the Stitch in Time blanket, Bits and Bobs blanket.
I was going to say, that's the next one.
I still absolutely love the Jelly Roll blanket, obviously, I really, really love. Yeah. And then sock-wise, it's been Fairground Socks, Crunkled Socks, Prairie Socks. It's those sort of patterns that over the years have become those sort of comfort knits for people, I think.
But I think at the early stage, the interesting thing is those were the patterns which were the obsession patterns. Those were the ones which oh my goodness.
Yeah, that is true.
And so you sort of feel this alchemy happening.
I sort of get a feeling when I think I've, I struck on something that would be...
That works.
That works.
That's all it is, isn't it? It works for you.
It works for me, and it's just lovely to crochet, I'll be honest. It's just a joy. So that is the indicator for me. If something for me is joyful to knit, to crochet, whatever, then I always feel that it will be for other people too.
And that is all to come later on.
I'll tell you all about it.
In the
show
show.
you in detail.
Oh, yes. Because
talk about it, yeah.
We also have lots of wonderful off your needles to share.
Yes.
Some very exciting projects. Of course, we have our pick of the projects coming later on the show. And we have the first episode of the story of Holy Island.
Oh, my goodness.
This is quite the episode.
It really is quite the episode. On a day which I've got to say the weather is glorious today.
We are basking in the coldness after baking in the heat.
It's been absolutely baking hot, and I think it is still hot down south.
It was 90 degrees 2 days ago.
It was 90 degrees, and we were moving Bryony out of her university flat when it was 90 degrees. Let me tell you, that was an experience.
Well, you can hear all about that experience in an extended radio show, which is coming out next week, because we actually recorded. We recorded after we dropped our daughter off at university in September, October, end of September last year. And we sort of bookended that first year with a reflection on that. And we spoke a lot about the joy of removing her from her accommodation in the baking heat. And that episode's out next week, so don't miss that. But yes, so much to get to today. Such an exciting show.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I'm just beyond excited about this crochet design, and I think it's because seeing the sort of excitement and getting that vibe and that feel, but then also with it being the first one. That's whoa.
I'm doing something fairly unusual when I show it to you, because usually when I have a design, in the past I've sort of not shown it until it's kind of at the end, but with this one, I have started it and I'm into it, but it's a way off the point of being released as a pattern. But I think it's playing such a big part of my creative life at the minute. To miss it out and to not tell you about it when I'm super excited about it, I think it doesn't feel right. So that's why I'm showing it sort of in progress at this early stage.
It's also crochet, and it won't take anywhere near as long to finish as
that is true. It's much quicker. As we all know, all those of us out there who knit and crochet, it's so much quicker than knitting. So
So look, with so much to get to, all those wonderful things, it's high time that I said, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so the first thing I want to show you today is something I've been working on pretty much every day. I've just been doing a few rows every day. I didn't really get any knitting done over the few days we were moving Bryony out, because I was just so hot. I could not even go near wool. It was just awful. I have still made some progress on this, and it's my Fairground Cowl. Here is where I'm at. Oh, it's so lovely. So I'm actually now on colour 6. So I'm pretty much to the halfway point. Oh, and I'm so pleased with how it's coming out.
It's the pink that makes it sing.
It's the pink is so lovely, isn't it? What I'm doing is I'm using the stitch pattern from my Fairground Socks. And again, this is something I've wanted to do for a few years. I've wanted to try a cowl using that stitch pattern because I had a feeling it would work really well. And it is working out absolutely beautifully. So what I'm using is the pink is a skein that I dyed up for my birthday this year, and it's just a kind of that sort of pretty marshmallowy pink, and it's got teeny tiny speckles of what shade of pink is this that I used? I did write it down. It might be the Dharma dye one that's Valentine blush. It might be that one, but it might not be. I do have it written down if I ever wanted to dye it up again. But then I put on some teeny tiny speckles of, it's Landscape Dyes Dusk, which is one of my favourite colours. It's like a dusky, lilac-y, purpley shade. It's really pretty. But when you speckle it, you just get these sort of little dark specks. Can you see there? But what I like about using this colour for speckling is it's not that really deep sort of black or brown. It just gives you a darker colour without being too stark. Lovely. So that's my background colour.
You should do one of those Patreon exclusive
Oh yeah, I
tutorials
should, shouldn't I? I should. Yeah, because it's such a pretty shade.
Following on from your Blackberry Crush one.
Yeah, I'm certain I wrote down what I did for this. I dyed one up for me and I dyed one up for a friend whose birthday was really close to mine this year. So we each got a skein of this pink loveliness. So I'm using this as the sort of not background, the alternate colour. And then the minis, because it is minis that I'm using, the actual deeper sort of colour sections, I'm using 2 sets of a mini skein club from Pixie Yarn that's called Roots. It's running through all of this year, and she's released the first 2. The third one is September, I believe, and then the fourth one will be November. So it will make a set of 24 altogether. So it's kind of replacing her advent calendar that she hasn't done for a couple of years. So I bought both of those and I'm working my way through. This one, actually, where I started with the green, this is the second set. And this one is the first set. I just wanted to start with the green. I was just really excited about these shades of green and just wanted to start with those. Doesn't make a difference when you're knitting a cowl at the end of the day, because it can be either way up, can't it, when you put it over your head. But yeah, I just really wanted to knit these greens and they're so pretty. So what I'm doing is, you can see I've got a broader section of the mini and then just a little wavy stripe of the pink, because I really wanted to show off these gorgeous colours of the minis. And it's working out that I'm only using about 8 grams of each of the minis. So I've still got, where are the 3 greens? That's purple. So those are the first 3 greens, look, that I started with. And I've still got about 12 grams of each left, which I love, because at the end of this project, I'll still have these 12 minis and I'll still have 12 grams of each left. So I could knit another cowl, or I can put these into a different project. I can make socks or whatever, or I can just add them into my leftovers collection. But because I'm getting the next 2 sets as well, then there's the opportunity to knit another cowl using the next 2 sets, which I might well do. It really makes a lovely, what, you know, could be potentially an advent project, because although there's only 12 minis, I think, you know, it might be you've got leftover advent sets that you've not used yet, or you've got leftovers from using an advent set, because you would only need, I would say, 10 grams of each of the minis. So you might have those left over and you might want to use them up, and that would make a lovely project. Or you could do it through Advent and just use 12 of your minis, but just do half of this section every day, if you know what I mean, to sort of break it down to 24. There's lots of options, because I think I will release this as a pattern, because it's just so lovely to work on. And anybody who's knit up the Fairground Socks will know how the pattern works. So just think of that in cowl form, and it just makes a lovely, relaxing project to sort of work on. I've been doing this first thing in the morning, you know, get 4 rounds done, or 6 rounds, or 8 rounds, or whatever you can fit in that little bit of space that you might want to work on it. So I'm using 3.25mm needles. I think I pretty much always use 3.25 for fingering weight yarn. This is all fingering weight yarn for cowls. I think occasionally I might have used 3mm. I don't know that I've used 3.5. I don't think so. I think I'm more often use 3.25, because I just really like the fabric it gives. It's loose enough. But look, if I stretch it out like that, because once it's blocked, it'll stretch out. You can see how lovely it's going to be. Oh, so nice. I think this will be a favourite cowl. And in terms of length, it'll be probably, you know, about twice this. I'm just about halfway through. But as an example, I'm sort of basing the length on this cowl. This one is my Philosopher's Cowl. I designed this years ago. And All of these yarns I dyed up, and they're all Harry Potter themed yarns. From the darkest down to this, up to this lightest. And the way that this cowl works, it is a simple stocking stitch cowl, but it's got what I call a melding system. These days it's known as fading, isn't it, or whatever other term people have used. But I called it melding when I designed this, because each of the colour kind of melds, and it felt like a word that was a bit kind of magical, mystical, you know, where you might see colours in a cauldron all melding together. It was like that. So you do a certain stripe sequence when you are changing colours to make it really lovely and blendy. And this is my most worn cowl, and it might look really long, and it is quite long, but that's what I really like about it, because when you put it on, it just has this, it's so lovely. You know, you get this really cosy, scrunched up wool all around your neck, and I love it. I wear this one constantly in the sort of autumn and winter. And yeah, I think it's actually one of my most favourite knits ever, because I was so pleased with how it all blended, you know, all the way through. And some of these colourways, I think I have dyed up at certain points on, you know, on various different dyeing series that I've done. So yeah, that's about the length. The only reason I was showing you that is because that's how long this one will probably come out. That's what I've based it on when I worked out number of rounds, of each colour. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it, and I'm just going to carry on and just do a few rounds on this every day, and it'll be completed when it's completed, and then all being well, I'll go through the process of getting this published. And I think it would just be a nice thing to put out maybe at the beginning of autumn, because I think the colours are quite autumnal, but still with that hint of summer with the pink running through as well, I think. Just one other thing I want to show you actually is I'm using these tiny little notebooks for, I don't know if I've mentioned this on one of my design diaries, but the way that I have used a design diary historically, I've used quite a big, thick book. And just lately, I seem to prefer just having little notebooks in each of the project bags of the whatever it is I'm working on. I do that for just sock projects. You know, I have a little book for me, one for Bryony, one for Dan, and it lives in whichever project I'm working on. But I wanted to have just little tiny project notebooks, and I found these ones, and they're from Beachy, and they're just teeny tiny. And look how, it's really thin. But what I like about these is there's quite a number of pages in, because the paper's really thin, but the paper is squared. I don't know if you can see that. So what I can do is I can either use it this way, or if I've got a longer chart, I can turn it this way and do the chart this way. And they're really sweet. I got them in a pack of 3. I think I got them from the Journal Shop in the UK, because we don't use Amazon anymore. So I know it wasn't Amazon. I think it was the Journal Shop. But it's Beachy, and I can't remember exactly what they were called. They're designed to fit into do you know that planner that's really little, the Beachy one? Is it Techo? I think they're designed to fit into that. But I really love these. They're really cute. So just wanted to mention that. So Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
What was that song where someone went techno?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody out there will know.
Somebody will tell us.
Probably from about our age group.
Yes.
Is that early 90s or late 80s? Oh, I don't know. Oh, I reckon.
I feel like it's 90s that. I don't feel like it's 80s.
I think all you'd have to do is type techno 3 times into Google, and it would immediately
and
ping
put
up.
Song. Yeah.
I bet you wouldn't even need to do that.
Really?
I bet you would just ping. Let's try it later.
We'll do it later. I can't do it now. So, yeah.
So what am I knitting? I'm knitting but I'm continuing to knit the lovely Sweetheart Cowl, and I'm so enjoying the section which caused me much wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Oh.
It's wonderful now. I must admit, I'm constantly nervous. I'm constantly spreading out my stitches.
Oh, you're on the circles.
I am. Now, I had a good run with them, because first time I did it, bad. Top one, better. Third time, looking actually quite good. Fourth time, like reaffirming what happened down here. I feel like they're coming out right. And that's just wonderful. And it is actually working, because I remember when I first started doing colour work, you sort of look around, you get lots of advice, and one of the things that people always say is spread out your stitches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it keeps the floats
the floats nice and relaxed and long, and they're not tight.
So I actually think my anxiousness and the constant spreading of my stitches is enabling me to make the fabric look really nice. The yarn's just perfect. The contrast between the dark and the sort of salmony.
It's almost slightly on the neon side, isn't it?
It's like a luminous salmon.
It really is, yeah.
I mean, who'd have thought that would be such a wonderful colour to knit with? And the funny thing is, I think if you knit it with that on its own, it might be a bit too much.
I think it would.
But actually combining it with something else, it's like it's knocking it back a touch, but then also making it pop. And it certainly makes the pattern pop. And I think
really does.
With a pattern that's got such subtle beauty as this, with the lots of flecks of stitches, I mean that,
because that grey is really quite tonal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, and the orangey colour is quite solid, and I think that works really well.
This for me is my most favourite type of colour work, because of those single stitches. And I think that what I love is I don't really want, I mean, sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but I think overall it does. I don't want any domination of stitches.
No, you don't like colour dominance, do you?
Particularly where you've got single stitches like this.
Yeah.
Because I think it looks more refined if it is an even fabric. And when it's blocked, it's going to look close to even.
It's a big stitch there.
Yeah, maybe I've changed the answer.
Yeah, I'm over-analysing, you know what
As always.
do. I know.
You can see why I get so anxious.
Yeah, but it's fine, isn't it? We're all different. I just like...
As we discussed in the last episode, I've made a breakthrough on my sock knitting. And,
right. Did you finish that other one? No, you're not quite
Not quite, but I will have for next time. The point is, I've made a breakthrough where I'm looking past the analytical mind and seeing, actually, it's okay. It's okay.
More than okay. Your sock knitting's really good.
Well, it's a lot better than it used to be. This, though, is where I'm really in my sort of hot zone. And I love this type of knitting, and I love that this feeds in so beautifully to the other, knitting that I love to do, which is, of course, the garments.
Looks lovely from a distance too, doesn't it? From a distance.
There's great action going on with the garment knitting at the moment. So, it just all feels... I think that's wonderful. When you're doing something and where everything feels like it's a wheel within wheels, everything is... So this is helping me do the garments better, and the sock knitting is preparing me for the potential small needle Gansey knitting, and, everything is sort of thought through. It's fun. Wonderful. So that is... my gorgeous sweetheart cowl.
Float inspection.
And it's high time, I think, that we should see what else is on your needle.
I love that. It's a pair of socks, and I've shown you these socks before, and I've finished one. However, for whatever reason, it's worked out a little bit big.
Oh, no.
It's a bit long on my foot, so I don't know if I'm going to knit the second one. I'm going to try it on again and just make my mind up, but it's the Scrappy beach socks that I started when we were on Holy Island, and I'm using just leftovers, and I chose a bunch of colours that reminded me of kind of seasidey, beachy, pebbly. I worked out, I'll show you the socks. So here's the first finished sock. Oh, and it is lovely, isn't it? I do really like it. It's just a bit long on the foot, and the problem is, I could rip back, but then it makes these stripes out of whack because I've done them in a certain width sequence. And I think possibly what's happened is because I can see at the top when I cast it on, my gauge is tighter than on the foot. I think, your gauge can just change, can't it? And normally my gauge is actually really consistent. I don't consciously think about my gauge because it's not something that ever really changes in terms of sock knitting. It's quite reliable. But clearly I was not in the zone, and I maybe was just knitting a bit looser on the foot, because it's actually come out wider than it normally would as well.
Bonkers.
It's really odd. It's really odd. So it's just a bit big overall. So I'm just deciding on whether I want to knit the other one, because if it's too long on my foot and a bit baggy as well. But it could be that if I stuck them in the washer, because over time I find that once a sock's been washed in the washer a few times, I only do them at 30 degrees, but they do over time shrink a little bit, don't they? I always find that anyway. So maybe that would happen, but it's
You need to put that on your foot, and you need to then... Because when do you wear socks now?
It is lovely. I wear socks like I've got a pair on now. I wear them in the house. I don't wear them out.
So you wear them in your indoor shoes?
Yeah.
So you need to put that on your foot. Then you need to put it in your indoor shoe, and you need to see how it feels.
When Dan says indoor shoes, I wear like Crocs in the house.
So do you see what I mean? Because if you have an emotional attachment to the sock,
I do really like them. There's lots of yarns I dyed. Like this is one I dyed. This one, this one, this one. This the heel one. Most of them I dyed actually.
Were you worried people would be imagining that you're wearing like indoor shoes like your mum wears?
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny because, right, we're a house that we're a no shoes house. You know, we've always been a no shoes house. I don't like wearing shoes in a house, you know. But growing up, that was never the case. People would walk in and out and got their shoes on, and it's not something that was ever an issue, you know. So maybe that's why I'm so the other way about it, you know. But it's a funny thing. Were you a no shoes house?
No.
Yeah. I wonder.
But my friend's house was a no shoes house. My best friend when I was growing up was a no shoes house, and I remember going round to his house, and I remember it feeling weird taking my shoes off.
Right. Yeah.
And then it felt really weird because his gran happened to be there, and she said, "Oh, are they muck spreading in the fields down your way?" And I said, "No." And she said, "That's funny. I thought someone had got in your shoes."
Right.
Implying that I had smelly feet.
That's not true with you at all. That's funny. Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? I wonder if it's a more recent thing.
Well, I don't know if it is because, you know, I went round to my friends and theirs
was a no shoe house. And when you think about it, you know, why would you wear shoes in your house? You're walking out in the outside where there's anything on the floor. So, you would always take your shoes off.
I think it often depends on the types of flooring you have in your house.
Yeah, if it's all hard flooring, it's not so bad. If it's carpets, then it's a nightmare, isn't it?
We did have a lot of hard flooring in our house.
We had like, gosh, back in that day, it was vinyl in the kitchen and then carpet everywhere else.
My friend had carpet everywhere.
Right.
So
even in the kitchen?
I don't recall, but I'm sure they didn't.
No.
But like you come in the hall and it's carpet, and it was lush carpet. So I always remember going around. Do you know what? You bring back memories. I remember taking off my shoes, putting it on, thinking, "Oh, this is nice." That's funny.
It's like when you have a new carpet put down. It's like, "Ooh, this is nice," and then like after a few months, it just feels like.
Normally, you just get used to it.
Yeah, you just get used to it. Yeah, so. Not sure if I'm going to knit the second one of these because I don't want to waste my time knitting the second one if they're going to be too big.
Put one on your foot, put it in your shoes, see how it feels.
I'll see how it feels.
Because
and then
if you feel like, oh yeah, I knit them on the island, really want them, then that might work. Because then, like you say, you wash them a few times, and then before you know it, they've shrunk down a bit.
They'd be fine, yeah. So I'll have a think. But isn't it a lovely sock? So I've used 10 yarns, I believe. And what I've done is I've done a thinner stripe and then a thicker, thinner, thicker. The thin stripes are 9 rounds and the thicker stripes are 18. So I've alternated. So the thin ones are half the width of the thicker ones. And the number of rounds that I knit on the foot is what I would normally knit for me. So it's got to be that my row gauge is just bigger. And I have used a variety of bases, so it could be that's throwing it off. You know, we've got a couple of these are 75/25s and a couple are 85/15s. So it could be that's throwing it off. I have had, though, some 75/25s when I've knit them up. My gauge is just completely bonkers and, like, really quite loose, and I could never work it out. So I don't know. I think it all depends on your state of mind at the time. You know, you put it down, you pick it back up a few days later, you start knitting tighter than you did before. It could be any of those things. But I'll see anyway. I'm having a ponder on whether I want to knit the next one or if I just want to start another pair of socks, you know. We'll see. Not the end of the world, is it?
No.
I still had a lovely time knitting them, so...
Yeah, and there is a potential way forward, definitely.
Yes.
There always is.
Yes.
With every pair of socks.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless it's pooling.
Oh, don't.
But that's a whole other story.
I'll see that next episode.
Yes, yeah.
Wait till you see the thing I'm knitting next episode. Oh.
Right, it's time to begin a brand new odyssey. Just off the coast of Northumberland lies a tidal island. It has the most spectacular story, really encompassing all of history. It's just amazing. When you combine that with the most wonderful scenery, also more wildlife than you can shake a stick at, you get a rather special place. Over the next 5 episodes, we're going to tell its story. There's Vikings. There's lots and lots of monks.
Yeah.
There's a mythical king who ended up being written into the story of King Arthur. It is just spectacular. This is the story of Holy Island. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our most adventurous series yet. In case you didn't know, I love history. I sort of grew up with it, really, going to school in York and living in a village on its outskirts. So I suppose when Back to the Future came out, it was pretty obvious that I was going to love it, because for me, learning about history was like travelling in time. The problem with history in the modern world is quite often you have to travel a bit to get to it. It used to do my head in when I was young. We'd go visit a castle one week, then I'd have to wait until the week after for our next trip out before we might see an abbey or maybe a Neolithic monument. Well, how stupid do you think I felt when I realised that there's a place where it's all within walking distance? From an absolutely spectacular Tudor castle with a history that spans hundreds of years, and it's got an interior that you won't believe it until you've seen it. To a priory with a heritage that goes back to the very foundation of Christianity in the British Isles. And what about the Paleozoic era? That's 60 million years ago to you and me. On this beach, we will find evidence of even that.
In this series, we're going to explore the history of an island that encapsulates the whole of the British Isles, but in a space that's 3 miles long and 2 miles wide. This is going to be absolutely spectacular. Welcome to my story of Holy Island. This really is it, the start of the most adventurous series we have ever produced. Over the next 5 episodes, we're going to be walking everywhere, as there is literally history hidden around every corner. Many of you may be wondering, where on earth am I? This is Lindisfarne. It's also known as Holy Island, and we're going to be discovering why later on in the series. It's set just off the northeast coast of England, and it is, as I'm sure you can hear, full of wildlife. It's a spectacular place, and I can't wait to show it to you. This really is a unique place, because whilst it is an island, it's only separated from the mainland for 10 hours a day. This has created a place that throughout history has found itself on the forefront of many great events. Evidence of habitation dates back to the Neolithic period, and really since then it's been a hotbed of activity. As the Romans left, Celtic warriors used it as a stronghold thanks to its natural defences. As the age of Christianity dawned, it became home to a host of men who would in time become saints. It was on the front foot as the Viking Age began in Britain. The Normans built a monastery here. The Tudors built a castle. It even was a hotbed of activity in the Industrial Revolution. Today, Holy Island is full of surprises. It's visited by over 500,000 people every year, but there's still places in this tiny space to find silence and tranquility, like here in the gorgeous Abbey, which we'll discover in episode 3 of this series. The island is an absolute oasis for gorgeous flowers and wonderful wildlife. There's grass of Parnassus, there's skylarks flying past, and if you stop at any moment, you're pretty much guaranteed to hear a curlew or a northern lapwing. Lindisfarne is also first landfall for many migrating birds. You'll find knot, dunlin, godwit and oystercatcher here in abundance. The island is also full of curiosities, from upturned herring boats used as bookshops, sand lanes with wind-blasted hawthorns, and sand dunes hiding the remains of a medieval farm. Everywhere you look, there's something to see. History waiting to be discovered. The question is, where do we start? Flint cutters and scrapers have been found in considerable quantity all over the island, and there's definite evidence of Mesolithic, Neolithic and the Bronze Age. But in this series, we want to focus on the real stories and the real people, so that means the written history. The first written history of Lindisfarne comes in the writings of a poet called Taliesin. Around the year 570, he wrote extensively about a British warrior called Urien, who was the Lord of Catterick. The town of Catterick actually remains to this day. It's about 2 hours south of here, so how did Urien come to be buried just off Holy Island? To uncover the story, we've come to the Hioff, a disused coastguard station that's now open to the public. It's set on top of a ridge of whinstone that was laid down by a volcanic eruption 295 million years ago. Humans have used this ridge of stone for thousands of years to get a better view. The ridge runs west straight across the country. Whilst this tower is modern, the Roman Emperor Hadrian spotted the ridge when he visited Britannia in 122 AD, and he chose it for his northern border of the empire. He put his wall right on top of it, but that's a whole other story. Speaking of the Romans though, that's where Urien's story begins. After the Roman Empire fell here in 410 AD, no one really left. They just stopped being paid and stopped receiving orders from Rome. The Romans who lived here as the generations passed became the first real British people. Given the fact that they had Roman ancestry, they still lived in the old Roman forts, and Catterick was one of them. Urien was probably the great-great-grandson of a Roman legionary based at the garrison that was there in Catterick. Back then, in Urien's time, the way that you got your word out was with poetry, something catchy that people would remember. And Taliesin was Urien's poet. Taliesin tells us in the Battle of Wensleydale that this is Urien, famous leader. He keeps his chiefs at bay and sides them down. The king of the baptized world, the scourge of the men of Britain. That's because Urien had an enemy. It was the invading Angles and Saxons, fighting men from Germany who were pagan. Whilst Urien was incredibly successful at keeping them at bay, he was getting older, and the Anglo-Saxons saw their chance. This island, back then, was prime real estate. And it's all because just over the sea, at Bamber, lies a fortress, and whoever holds Lindisfarne holds the fortress at Bamber. So the pagan Anglo-Saxons invaded Lindisfarne and they took it over. And that was something King Urien could really not stand for, because the next step would be branching out over onto the mainland, taking Bamber and potentially conquering the whole of the country. So Urien and his allies got together a huge army and they surrounded the island. And Urien's camp was just over there. But there was a traitor in the British ranks. One of Urien's fellow leaders had been bought off by the Anglo-Saxons. On the brink of a great British victory, he crept under the cover of darkness and surprised Urien just out there near those beacons. This was the last battle of the British. The Anglo-Saxons now controlled the whole of the old Roman lands. Whilst Urien's head was carried away by the assassin, his body was buried where he fell, forever standing guard on Lindisfarne. Urien captured the imagination of many for hundreds of years, so much so in fact that Geoffrey of Monmouth introduced him into the story of King Arthur. Urien in Geoffrey's story is actually Arthur's father. Not bad for a man who died in the 590s. The funny thing is, that's not the bit of the story that really blows my mind. For some reason, I never perceived the Romans as being Christian, but of course they were. I always thought that Christianity arrived with the disciples of St. Patrick about 50 years after the Romans left Britain. What I find really mind-blowing, though, about this is that with the defeat of King Urien, that marked the end of Christian rule in Britain. But just 44 years later, it would be Lindisfarne itself that would lead the charge for the return of Christianity. And this time, it wasn't going anywhere. The year was 634, and the Anglo-Saxon king of Northumbria was a man called Oswald. He was preparing to battle with his greatest enemy here at Heavenfields on Hadrian's Wall. The night before the battle, he saw a vision of St. Columba, a sainted Irish monk who had spread the word of Christianity from the Scottish island of Iona. Columba told Oswald he would be victorious if he became a Christian and ruled justly. Oswald won and felt compelled to obey the vision. So Oswald sent a message to Iona. He asked them to send a contingent of monks to come and convert his kingdom. Whilst they were initially based on the mainland, they quickly asked to be moved here, Lindisfarne. The story to this stunning place, becoming known as Holy Island, had begun. You would think that the start to this story would be lovely, wouldn't you? I always perceive monks as being really sort of chilled out and can cope with anything, can't they, monks? That's certainly how they've come across to me as I've gone through my life. But it's actually not the case at all in this particular circumstance, because the man who was led to lead those initial monks that came here to convert the Northumbrians called the locals lewd, obstinate and ungovernable, and he refused to do the job. But thankfully, there was one within their number who decided to take on the challenge, and his name was Aidan. Aidan became the leader of the monks. It was he who moved them from Oswald's palace at Bamber to Lindisfarne. He felt if they lived too close to Oswald that it would politicise religion. That was something Aidan disagreed with fundamentally. Lindisfarne was the perfect place for Aidan to be successful. Close enough to Bamber so that he could still help Oswald shape policy in Northumbria to enable Christianity to spread, but far enough away so that his monks could still uphold the daily round of worship. And being here today, it's not difficult to see why Aidan chose this spot to set up his monastery. This is what Aidan and his 12 monks were coming to. It's idyllic, isn't it? Neil, archaeological digs have been done on other Anglo-Saxon sites, and quite a lot has been found out about what those early monasteries looked like. There was an outer stone wall. It was very short, though. It wasn't to protect against attack because no one expected them to be attacked. It was like a barrier, like a symbolic barrier to keep out evil, if you like. Within the circular wall, there would have been wooden huts, and in those wooden huts, the monks lived with one student. There would have been a simple barn-like wooden church, and there would also have been a tall stone tower that, in the event of danger, the monks were supposed to go and take shelter in. These monks were not like what you would imagine, though, because they were Celtic monks, not Roman Catholics. They were disciples of St. Patrick, who had developed his own approach to Christianity around the time of Urien's great battle. Patrick had fled to Ireland when the Roman Empire fell and converted thousands to Christianity. They in turn had spread to Scotland via the island of Iona. So what did these Celtic monks look like? It's not actually what you'd expect. When you think of a monk, I don't know about you, but I think of the tonsure, where the whole of the top of the head is shaved and then they've got a line of hair. That's actually the Roman Catholic style for monks. The Celtic style was really quite different. What they used to do was they used to shave their head at the front from ear to ear, so right the way across, and then at the back they would let it grow really long. That's actually the style of the warriors of the day, and the reason why they did this was they wanted to be seen as soldiers of Christ. Life at Lindisfarne was thriving, even in those early years as Aidan struggled to learn the native language. Oswald offered himself to translate for him so he could communicate with the locals. It's perhaps one of those moments in history when everything fell into place, because with the King of Northumbria spreading his word, everybody listened. Oswald gave generously, funding churches and monasteries all across his kingdom. That is, until his death in battle on the 5th of August 642. He was defending his Christian kingdom from the pagan king of Mercia. The site of his death became a pilgrimage for early Christians. He was believed to have fallen near a tree, and so it became known as Oswald's Tree. Today it's grown into a small market town called Oswestry in Shropshire. But what would become of Lindisfarne now its great patron was dead? Was this the end or just the beginning? You'll have to come back in part 2 to find out. So thank you so much for watching so far, and I'll see you later on in the show with part 2.
What a start, and what a place. And also, what is just amazing is to find out that the sort of earliest mentions of Lindisfarne in the history books was all related to, of course, that King Urien. And King Urien came from Catterick, which is like 7 miles from where I'm sat right now. So we were all that way up the coast, and back then, I mean, that was quite a distance he must have travelled. And then how sort of spectacular that King Urien then finds himself, because his story became so sort of mythical, that then Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote him into the story of King Arthur, King Arthur's dad. I remember actually watching, because I know there's Uther Pendragon, that's one of the characters.
I don't know it very well.
Well, I tell you who you do know from it. You will never have seen Excalibur, I don't think.
I don't think so.
No, well, Excalibur is a sort of classic film. John Boorman, Charlie Boorman, who does the bike riding. Yeah, his dad was the director of this film. And it's like a who's who in the film. Liam Neeson's in it. Helen Mirren's in it. And Galahad, he is the guy in Murder Under the Sun. Evil Under the Sun. Evil Under the Sun, yeah, sorry. That's terrible. Evil Under the Sun, you know, the guy...
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
anyway. Yes. So in the film with Peter Ustinov...
Names.
The guy who played Galahad is...
Oh, right, okay. Well, he is quite a dashing-looking fella, so that might work.
He's properly dashing in Excalibur.
You I kind of want to watch it now.
I loved that film when I was young.
Right.
I absolutely loved it. It's like, for me, it's the quintessential telling of the Arthur story. Really, really.
Which is just a made-up story. It wasn't a real person, was he? Am I right in that?
You are right, but Geoffrey of Monmouth was writing a semi-fictionalised history of England.
Right.
So I believe that there was a King Arthur.
Oh, right, okay.
But that a lot of stories were written about him that were untrue.
Ah. And did he live at Tintagel?
No.
Or is that's all made up?
That's all rubbish. Because Tintagel was built as a sort of folly-ish type castle,
right,
by someone much, much later who wanted to build a castle that looked like it was from much longer ago.
And isn't that just bizarre that people visit it now because of the King Arthur thing? And just all made up.
But I love the fact, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's sort of, I think it's like 15th century. So it's old. It's old. But for it to hit the King Arthur,
it would need to be
600. It would need to have been around.
Right, okay.
Because King Arthur was, within the book, I believe that King Arthur was a Romano-British person. So that like was the film with Clive Owen.
So 600 AD, not BC.
600 AD. Right. So like the film with Clive Owen. Do you recall there's a film with Clive Owen? I can't remember exactly what it's called, but also Ray Winston's in it, and we've seen it a few times.
Oh, have we?
Yeah, we really liked it. It might even be called King Arthur. I'll put it in the show notes anyway. I'll link you to that. So I believe that the real story of King Arthur is more that. He was maybe a Roman soldier who, when the Romans pulled out, he stayed in this country and he fought with the native British people.
All right, okay.
Anyway, my goodness, what a start to the series.
Yes.
And when we come back in part 2, we will be starting to sort of delve into the events which lead up to the dawn of the Vikings. Oh, yes. So I think now it's time for a change, because since we launched our Pick of the Project segment, I've always gone first. But today it's way too exciting. I don't even want to wait, and I'm sure you don't want to wait to find out all about the crochet jelly roll, which of course is Kay's Pick of the Project.
Oh, it's fooling me. I'm going first.
Yes.
Right, yes. So, my crochet jelly roll. I have the blanket here that I'm working on, the actual blanket, but I started off with swatches, so I guess that's where I should start. And I'm using another one of these little notebooks that I just showed you, pale blue one this time, so I really like these. So yeah, when I first started thinking about this, I'm not going to go into huge detail because I like to keep the detail for design diaries that I do. But basically, the thought in my head was that I wanted to make a blanket, same kind of construction and look of the jelly roll blanket, which is knitted, but crocheted. So the first thing, I guess, to start off with is what stitch do I want to use? What crochet stitch do I want to use? And I think I always knew I wanted to use a linen stitch. Linen stitch or moss stitch, it's sometimes called as well. I knew I wanted to use that stitch because it produces a really closely woven looking fabric.
And it doesn't look like crochet.
It kind of doesn't look like crochet. I actually sent a picture of this to a friend recently, and she didn't realise it was crochet. She thought I was just doing a different version of a knitted jelly roll. So I quite like that it doesn't scream crochet at you. I like that because I think it would then appeal to people who might not, because I know some people don't really like the look of crochet, and that's fair enough.
Because it has a stigma attached to it. When I think of crochet, you think of the sort of holy, airy.
Well, I suppose you think of granny squares, don't you, when you think of crochet? And this looks nothing like the fabric of a granny square. So yeah, that's where I started off with, knowing that I wanted to use linen stitch or moss stitch. The first thing I did, I literally this is the first little swatch that I did. I grabbed a couple of yarns, DK yarns, out of my stash, and I just thought, right, well, I'm just going to give it a go. It's full of ends because there's no point weaving them in, it was just a swatch. But I did this. This yarn actually was a gift from a friend for my birthday, and I wanted to just give it a try with doing a little bit of something. It's Drops Daisy. It's really nice. So I just used these two colours. And this was my first attempt, and it's not perfect, and I changed quite a bit from this original swatch, but this was my starting point. I then went on and pulled out some more DK yarn from my stash. This one is King Cole Merino DK. It's called something else as well, isn't it? But anyway, this one is King Cole. So I did this little swatch, and this one I was trying out joining techniques, just tweaking it again, trying something else. And then I also started just trying a little idea for what I would do about a border. I don't know if I'd call it a border. It is more of just finessing the edge. So that was my second little swatch that I did. And when I'd sort of narrowed down the techniques and was happy with it, I then... Did I do this one, then that one? Yeah, I did this one. I thought, right, okay, I will do a proper swatch using... Because what this blanket is made from is fingering weight held double. And the reason I've done that is because that's sort of the equivalent of a DK. And I know with crochet that a lot of crocheters like making blankets from DK yarn. Things like Stylecraft, special DK, you know, drops yarns, Skipper's yarns, those kinds of sort of DK yarn. So I thought if I do fingering weight held double, then it appeals to a wider sort of range of crafters, let's say, because it could be that if you are a staunch crocheter and you primarily use DK yarns, then my thought is that they would have loads of leftovers from other blankets they've made, that sort of thing. So I tried out a sort of proper swatch with fingering weight held double, and it looked like this. And again, I was even tweaking then because the edge here wasn't coming out perfectly straight. So I changed that just here and got it to straighten off. Can you see how the edge here, the top edge, is nice and straight? I changed slightly how I worked the first row into the chains and just came up with how I wanted the colour sequence to work. Oh, and then the other thing I did here, and it's done here as well, but you can't tell so much with these greens because the colours are close, is I wanted to change yarns and work out the best point and the best way to change colours. So that was worked out on this swatch. And then the final swatch I did was I wanted to just work out an edging. So I got 3 colours of a DK yarn. This one is Sheepy's Merino Soft, something like that. But I just picked up 3 colours of DK yarn from my stash, just worked a little section, and then this was purely to work out the edging, because what I wanted with the edging was just something really delicate that just finishes it off. So this was what I sort of came up with, and I really like this. It's just simple, it's quick, and it just finishes it off nicely. So those were all of my swatches. So then I've started the actual blanket, and I'm on the 3rd strip, and this is how it's looking.
Wow.
So here is where I'm up to. And I just love it. So you can see I've constructed it the same way that I did my jelly roll, the knitted version. What I've decided to do with this one, actually, because with the knitted jelly roll, it's not in a rainbow formation. I just chose colours by, you know, whatever colour I wanted to do next in terms of colour group for each strips. With this one, I thought it would be fun to actually do it in a kind of rainbow. I wanted to get pink in as well, so I've added a pink. So, you know, this first strip is all shades of red. The next one is pink, and then the next one is orange, and then I'll go on from there. And I think I'll end up doing 2 full rainbow repeats to get the width that I want. So yeah, I'm holding 2 fingering weights double, and then whenever I sort of run out of that bit, or whenever I fancy changing to the next colour, I'm just doing that. I'm cutting and joining where I wanted to join, and it's just working out beautifully. And what I'm most pleased with, because I just love the whole thing, but I really love the join. It's so neat. You know, the way that I've joined. Yeah. This is the front. It's so neat. And the back is also really pretty. You get a slightly different, I've got a couple of ends there to weave in, but you get a slightly different look on the back. But even the back is super pretty. Because of the way I've joined, you get this kind of regular little blip going down, and I just think that also looks really lovely. So the whole thing is super neat, and I just absolutely love it. I'm just thrilled that I've managed to do it, and I really hope that this appeals to people. I mean, please do comment. I'm really keen, to get your initial reaction. If you are a knitter and a crocheter, and for example, if you've made a jelly roll blanket, would you be excited about making a crochet version? Is that something that would appeal to you? Because I really would like to get that feedback, and please do tell me what you think. But I think it's just going to look so pretty. I've never written a crochet pattern before. However, I've got a lot of experience now writing knitting patterns, and I'm just going to take that experience and that knowledge and write a crochet pattern. Now, I know that...
You've already done research, though.
I've done some research already, and
you've been a crocheter for a long time.
And I've crocheted for a long time, yeah. And I know that UK and US terminology are different, and I'm working a way of making sure that I cover both of those bases within the pattern. So if you're in the US, you'll be able to read it easily. If you're in the UK, you'll also be able to read it easily, because, for example, a treble crochet in the UK is a double in America. So I'm going to make sure that that is all covered in the pattern, and that both terminologies are catered for. And I'm just going to write it in the way that I write my knitting patterns, but it'll be crochet, and it'll obviously get test crocheted. So it's going to be a whole big process, but I really wanted to show it to you, because I think if, this excitement that I get at the beginning of something, by the time I get to the end of it, I might not be able to convey that excitement in the same way, because we might be X number of months down the line, and you sort of lose that initial excitement, I think. So that's really why I wanted to show it to you. And
the wonderful thing about this is, though, remembering that it's crochet and that it'll work up so much faster. So I think there's a chance that you're not going to lose that.
It's way faster. I mean, I see this section here, this orange section. I sat down last night and I crocheted this orange section in about 15 minutes.
I mean, come on.
And I could not have knitted that amount in 15 minutes.
No.
So it is much faster, because it's a thicker yarn as well. My jelly roll originally was just fingering weight. I did then update it to put in a thicker weight into the pattern. But because this is thicker, it would work up quicker anyway. And crochet is just quicker, as anybody who does both crafts will know that it's quicker. But the most thrilling thing for me was just exploring something new and working out how to do it, because I initially thought, I have no idea how to join this as you go, because what you do, I've cut my yarn here because I'm ready to join in a new one, but you work across and then you join it here as you're working across, so there's no seaming. So it was that working out how to join to the edge. I was like, oh, can I do that? And I did, and it's actually really intuitive when you do it. Once you've seen how you do it, because I will put videos into this, I'll do lots of videos, because I know a lot of people are visual learners, so I will be putting videos in like I usually do. And once you see how you do it, you're away and you're like, yeah, you've just got to get your eye in and know where you're picking up, and it's not a problem. I don't think it's a problem anyway.
The thing that I think is also really, really exciting is there are absolutely tons and tons and tons of crocheters who aren't knitters out there, who you would never have been able to really engage with before.
No, that's right.
And the thing that you enjoy so much is creating something that someone then goes away and makes and then gets joy from, and opening up a whole new section of people that you can engage with is incredibly exciting.
Really exciting. Yeah, really exciting.
I mean, the potential is just so great, and it makes us feel like what we did when we first started.
Yeah.
Because it's like, people who don't have any clue who you are, who we are, and there's a thing here which might just excite them. Well, it will excite them.
It's such a pretty fabric.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you again, because it's
gorgeous.
I'm going to fold it over and show you close-up fabric. Can you see?
It looks so different.
So lovely.
It's unlike anything I've seen you crochet before.
Yeah.
And, you know, it also pays a wonderful sort of homage to the jelly roll, which is... But it's also different.
It is different. Yes, okay, it's based on that same...
Idea. Yeah. But it looks different. It looks
different. It's got a different overall look. If you held one next to the other, you would see that it's the same idea, but the fabric does look different, and it just gives a different feel working on it. It is
so fun.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. And what I did to I was like, right, I need to go through all of my leftovers. So I got them all out, right, and tipped them all up on the floor and put them into colour groups. And what I've done is I've got loads of these wool warehouse bags, the organza bags that you get. So I've grouped all of the colours. So, for example, this is all of my blues. And then I've got yellows and oranges in this one because I realised that the colour that I'm lacking the most is actually yellows. I think I will have enough. But I might have to go hunting for a few yellows or dye some up. Of course, I could do that. The colour I've got the most of, it was an interesting process, you should do it with your leftovers, is green. I've got a massive bag of green leftovers. So more than enough green. And I know how much, I've weighed it all the way through and I know exactly how much I've used for each strip. So, I'm keeping really detailed notes of all of the facts and figures and things like that people will be interested in.
What's the bag you're keeping it in?
Oh, yeah, so it's living in a bag I just made. And this is the bag. It's the 100 Acre tote bag. Literally just made this, was it last week? And this is the bag that all of our patrons are going to be making, and the process for that has started.
It did. It started just this week, and here's a little snippet of that first episode.
Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, I'm back in the lovely outdoors. But yes, it's July now, and it's time to start making this beautiful bag. So what I've got here are all of the fabric pieces that have been cut out. Underneath here, I've got my 2 inner pieces. So to interface the outer pieces, I always use the same thing, actually, I have for years. And I've got the little edge bit off it. And I bought this little kit years ago, and it served me really well. It's got all of these different colours, and then you do need the tool as well. I thought I would show you just my little tool kit that I've got. You are going to need is a good pair of fabric scissors. I use what's this called? Rotary cutter. My brain went blank. So I hope you enjoy getting everything ready. I can't wait to see all your fabrics. Do post photos in the Facebook group. I would love to see all your fabrics. That's going to be so fun. And I will see you back in the next video when we are going to get to the sewing.
Yes, over 4 parts. Kate takes you through every stage of making that gorgeous bag.
Yes.
All hosted from another little sort of setting in our gorgeous own 100 Acre wood.
Yeah.
And literally the moment we finished filming, it started to rain.
It did. It started to pour down.
It was perfect. It was perfect timing.
Yeah, it was really good
better.
timing. But that bag is the perfect thing for housing this in, because you can keep all of your little leftovers, your minis. I've got my swatches in there, I've got my notebook in there, crochet hook, all of the bits and pieces. It's a really great size, so it's just like alchemy at the moment that I've got the perfect project bag for the perfect new project.
It is gorgeous, and we all can't wait.
Well, you keep saying it's funny, Dan never has commented as much about something when I'm working on it. He keeps saying, I do really like that. That is really lovely, and you never do that normally, so that's been really nice.
Because it is.
Thank you very much. Well, I think so, and I'm excited, and I'm excited to hear what you think about it. Yeah,
we're just really sort of looking forward to the creation of, you know, the pattern will be fun, but then also doing the accompanying videos, and this will be a pattern that will go on general release.
It
so
will,
you'll
of
all
course.
be able to buy it.
It will, yes, I didn't say that, but my plan is that this will be a pattern that I'll be releasing for anyone to purchase and anyone to make a beautiful crochet jelly roll. Yeah.
Here's my pick of the projects. I won't keep you long because
I waffled on.
It's just my Albion, but the reason why it's become my pick of the projects...
Don't say just.
The last time I showed this, I was a little bit sort of nonplussed. I was feeling a little bit down about the project, and I worked out why it was. And the reason was I was associating knitting this garment with my other garment knitting. So I was thinking I should feel the same about this project as I do the Roosty, which I showed you last time, which is now, you know, properly back in the rotation, and also the Latlopi colourwork jumpers that I make. And I realised that was a mistake, because those Latlopis and the Roosty are very exciting projects. There's lots going on, there's yarns all over the place, there's tons of ends, you know, it really is a sort of exciting mishmash of colour and you know, techniques too, really, because, you know, there's so much going on with regards to knitting up the colourwork and the different elements of the colourwork. Right, this isn't. This is just a relaxed knit. And once I realised I needed to treat it as a relaxed knit and reach for it when I am in that sort of, you know, where you're knitting something and you don't want anything too taxing. Because if it's too taxing, you're going to make a mistake because you're a bit tired, and just one of those easy projects. And as soon as I started thinking of this like that and knitting this at those times, I've started to love the process. And that sort of opened a door for me, because it's made me realise not all garments need to be taxing.
No.
Some of them can just be like, you know, relaxed and lovely knits. And it won't be when I get up to the top, because we will be doing some different things up there. But, you know, right now, it's just knits and pearls. And it's going to be lovely.
I think it's going to be a beautiful
Cascade 220, you know.
Midnight Heather.
Great yarn.
The colour.
You know, feels nice.
It's working up lovely.
Yeah.
I've got to say. It's really, really lovely. It's not as sort of bright as that in real life.
It's a really well-written pattern, which of course it would be, because it's Michelle Wong.
Yeah.
And
I think it's really nice.
There's lots of clever elements to it. You know, lots of really simple but effective design.
This to you is like a stocking stitch jumper to someone else.
Yeah, or a blanket for you.
Or a blanket, yeah. It's that kind of relaxed.
Yeah, and I'm not used to knitting projects like that.
No, you're not.
And so I've needed to really think about when I knit this, because if I knit it at the wrong time, I'm like, this is so boring. And I don't want it to be that way. You know, I want to enjoy it. And so, like I say, realising that
it's really
and fitting it in the slots.
It is really beautiful, though. The fabric is just so lovely.
I'm excited to see it finished and excited to see it on. And I'm thrilled that the sleeves are plain.
Yes.
Because they needed to be.
Yeah, it's very... I think if the sleeves had got this pattern
it would have been too much.
Yeah, and I think it would have been tricky to maintain this pattern with the decreases, wouldn't it?
But I think even imagining that you could, I think that it would have lost a bit of its chicness. I think if you look at the model who's wearing this, I mean, there's a few different, actually, if you go on Ravelry and you have a look, what makes it cool is it looks quite sort of chic.
I think it does too.
It doesn't look granddaddy at all. And
No.
you know, I was saying that, and I think it's because I was imagining this across the whole jumper. So, you know, sleeves, everything. And then that starts to become like the squishy jumpers your granddad wore when you were a kid. And I don't want to wear jumpers like that.
I wouldn't let you look like a granddad.
No, not yet anyway.
Oh, no.
Ever.
Don't think about that. We don't need to go down that path.
We certainly do not.
No.
So that is my pick of the projects. Now,
I really like it. I think it's lovely.
it's very exciting because there's two wonderful projects to have a look at.
Oh, goodness, right.
She had many opportunities to get ready. She failed in all of them.
They're over there.
So now with the marvels of television, yes, it's time for me to say, Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
I've got two lovely things. Oh, was that you? Off my needles. The first is a pair of socks. I finished the Oakworth socks that I was working on a little while ago. Do you remember these ones? So I've finished these. I love how they've turned out, actually. So the Oakworth Socks was a pattern from Knitty You from 2020.
I dare say.
We did. I dare say. And yeah, I've spoke about this pattern before at length, and I know it's a favourite with our patrons. I see people knitting this one up all the time, but it just basically has 2 rows of garter down either side of the sock. When I designed these, that was meant to represent train tracks, and it does look like that when you've got it on your foot. The only difference with this pair is I put in my butterfly heel, which isn't in the pattern, it's just a standard heel flap and turn. But the reason I put this one in is because this yarn was knitting up in this sort of stripy swirly fashion, and I didn't want to disrupt that, because if I'd put in a normal heel here, it would have gone all weird over the gusset, and I didn't want to do that. So this yarn is Dandelion and Dogwood. This is the leftovers that I've got, and I bought this a while ago, and when I bought it, it was missing the colour, but I'm pretty sure it's something like s'mores and... is it s'mores and hot chocolate around the campfire, or something like... no, ghost stories and s'mores around the campfire. I think that's what it is. It's something like that. And yeah, I didn't know how it was going to knit up, and when I saw it was knitting up like this in this self-swirly thing, I thought, right, I like how it's knitting up, but I need to put in my butterfly heel so it doesn't mess with that. And they're all done. I used the pink on the toe, fawn on the heel, and they're all finished, and they're going to go into my sock stash, which is doing marvellously well this year, I've got to say. I'm doing a brilliant job. I can't remember how many pairs I've got now, but it's got to be 7 or 8 so far. So that's lovely. So my second finished item is my Bits and Bobs cowl. I finished it. This lovely one. Oh, I love how it's worked up. So I've been knitting this one for a little while because I wanted a more wintry themed coloured Bits and Bobs cowl. This is one of my designs, and this was inspired by the blanket, which I've already mentioned. And I wanted to do it in cowl format. So for this one, I just wanted more dark, moody autumnal colours. So that's what I did. And this one also uses fingering weight held double. So I just graduated through a bunch of colours, and I moved from browns into blues and then back out to browns. And I just really love how that came out. I love this cowl. I wear my original one, which I've still got and still wear. So this is a few years old, this pattern. But what I really love about this cowl is the size of it. It's quite a roomy, big, cosy cowl, because this stitch pattern is very stretchy. And can you just see how it just contains your whole neck? I just love it. It's another one of my favourite designs, I've got to say. And the size of it is just so lovely. It's so snuggly and warm and just cosy. So I know I will love wearing this in the autumn and winter. So I'm really pleased with how that came out. And I'm really pleased I took the trouble to knit another one, because I'd already knit the original one for the pattern, and then I made another one which I used some gradient mini skeins with. And then this is the third one I've made. So usually, because I have so many different ideas in my head and I want to knit that next thing that's in my head, I don't often repeat things. The only time I do it usually is with socks. I've done so many Fairground socks, Crunkle socks, Prairie socks, all of the sort of favourite ones that you go back to. But this one, I'm really glad I took the time to make another one of, because now I've got this one that's these lovely dark colours. Yeah, love it.
Gorgeous.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful projects. And with that, I think we should get back to the wonders of Holy Island.
Welcome back to my story of Holy Island. This is Lindisfarne Priory, and it was built about 400 years after Aidan founded his first monastery here on the island. What are we doing here? Well, later on in the series we will be discovering this wonderful place's story, but we've come here this time because if we look closely we can find little echoes, little remnants of that place that Aidan called home. The first clue that we're walking through, at least the floor plan of a Celtic church, is something that can be seen from above. Because whilst the monks had their own church to worship in, which we're stood in right now, the pilgrims who came to visit and the people who lived on Lindisfarne had their own church to attend. And that church is now the island's parish church. From above, we can see that the parish church and the priory church are on exactly the same alignment. This was common practice in Celtic monasteries, and seeing this tells us that the layout of Lindisfarne has been pretty much the same since Aidan built it 1,391 years ago. Apart from this, what do we find right in the middle of a Celtic church and monastery? It's always the same thing, it's always a giant cross. And that cross was always situated in the centre of the monastic precinct. So what do we find between the monks' church and the pilgrims' church here at Lindisfarne? It's the base of a cross, the socket, if you like, that the Celtic cross was dropped into. Now, we can't know for certain, but it's highly likely that this is a tantalising relic of those first monks of Lindisfarne. You really do get a sense of the safety that Aidan and his community must have felt here even today. But with the death of Oswald, these were turbulent times in Northumbria. The kingdom was now split into two. The south was ruled by Oswald's cousin, and the north here was ruled by his brother, and he was a man called Oswey. Thankfully, Aidan's work was supported by everyone, so life for him and his community continued as normal. But Oswey was not prepared to rule half a kingdom. Whilst Oswey's cousin was king of southern Northumbria, that didn't stop Oswey from arranging his death. This was perceived as a truly shameful act by Oswey, who professed to be a Christian. His people hated him for doing it, and the southern kingdom of Northumbria refused to accept him as their new king. 16 years had now passed since Aidan's arrival on Lindisfarne, and whilst his work had been extremely successful, he was deeply distressed by the actions of Oswey. So he made his way down here to the harbour, and he got on a boat and he set sail for Oswey's castle at Bamber. This was the beach where Aidan's voyage began. The journey was short, just a few miles along the coast to Bamber Castle that we can just see in the distance. But as he got closer to his destination, he could hardly breathe. Clearly, the stress of the situation was too much for him. Aidan landed on Bamber Beach and went to the church for help. The clergy erected a small tent where they could care for him, but lying across from Lindisfarne on the 31st of August 651, Aidan died. Whilst parts of his remains may in time have ended up on Iona and even Glastonbury, He was buried somewhere on the island, and it will have been close to this spot. And to this day, people across the world remember him on his birthday. To them, he is St. Aidan, and he does, to this day, still look down on there's so many pilgrims who come to visit and so many people who come to look at this wonderful statue. But I do think it is rather lovely that to this day that St. Aidan is still right here looking straight on at that abbey that he helped create. Aidan was succeeded by Finan as Bishop of Lindisfarne. Whilst Aidan may have disliked Osway's actions, the ensuing years of his reign saw Celtic Christianity spread to places they never could have dreamed of. Osway saw in the growth of Christianity a hope for peace throughout the land. Finan soon found himself consecrating bishops as far south as Essex. But there was an unexpected challenge. The Roman Church had sent missionaries to the south of England, and the Roman Church believed in a slightly different approach to Christianity. What brought things to a head was King Osway's wife. She'd been brought up in Kent under the Roman beliefs, and as Easter arrived at Bamber Castle, that created a problem. As Osway wanted to feast, his wife wanted to fast, and to King Osway, that was unacceptable. So Osway called the first ever meeting of the Christian Church in England, just down the coast at Whitby. The meeting took place not far from this spot, and it was decided that the Celtic Church would follow the same set of rules as the rest of the Christian Church. There was a great debate, but I think the truth is more obvious. In his quest to make his wife feel comfortable in a home far away from where she'd grown up, King Osway decided to follow her lead in this matter. For Lindisfarne, this meant a change was on the horizon. Whilst they had been the mission which had spread Christianity across the bulk of England, now it would cede its influence to the Roman Church's main seat in the country, Canterbury. But whilst Lindisfarne had been downgraded in its influence, the ensuing years would perhaps be their most successful yet. Tantalising evidence of this golden era can be found here. If you're as lucky as me and you get to visit Lindisfarne, then look out for St Cuthbert's beads. They can be found on this beach. They're about the size of a pea, but sadly today they're exceptionally rare. The beads are fossilised remains of a marine invertebrate known as a crinoid or feather star. Walter Scott wrote about them in Marmion, a historical romance written in verse. Here's a snippet. But fain St Hilda's nuns would learn, if on a rock by Lindisfarne, St Cuthbert sits and toils to frame the sea-born beads that bear his name. How did this legend come about? It's because a man called Cuthbert spent much of his time on that island, just off Lindisfarne, praying. People wondered what he was doing there. Some of them thought that he was making tiny little beads known today as St Cuthbert's beads. He was definitely making friends with the eider ducks that have lived there for generations. They're actually known locally today in honour of St Cuthbert as cuddy ducks. So who was this man with beads and birds named after him? His life was rather inspirational, so much so that on his death one of the treasures of Anglo-Saxon Britain was created here on Lindisfarne. You you can view a copy of this illuminated gospel book in the Lindisfarne Heritage Centre. And here it is, or at least a copy. This is the Lindisfarne Gospels, and they were produced in the monastery here on the island. Its pages are vellum, and evidence from the manuscript reveals that the pages were made using roughly 150 calfskins. The book is in total 516 pages long. How do we know? Because the original exists in the British Library. This book was inspired by the life of Cuthbert, and it was written 1,310 years ago. But who on earth was he? Cuthbert's call to Lindisfarne came on the night that Aidan died. He was caring for some sheep in the southern hills of Scotland, about 50 miles from here, straight up the coast. Up until this point, he'd not been a religious man, but on that night he got his calling, and the very next day he offered himself to the monks at Melrose Abbey. From the start, Cuthbert was stricter with himself than the rule required. He often spent the night in prayer, sometimes even a second or third, but always sleeping on the fourth. He was incredibly strong, and he threw himself into the physical work of the monastery with enthusiasm. Over the next 14 years, Cuthbert's reputation grew tremendously, and at the age of 30, he became prior at Lindisfarne, second in command to the new abbot. Cuthbert's job was to help the brothers of the monastery to convert to the practices of the Roman Church. Many were obviously really quite reluctant at first, but Cuthbert was so enthusiastic in his task. All followed wherever he led them. Now, for 12 years, Cuthbert remained as prior, and his reputation spread. Across the whole country, he became a national and even an international figure. But then, after 12 years, Cuthbert decided he wanted to retire. And the place that he initially chose was that island that we saw earlier, just off Lindisfarne. The deeds of Cuthbert became legendary. The story goes that he used to wade out until he was up to his neck in the freezing cold North Sea. He would then spend the whole night praying. He'd then come in, dry himself off, and he'd head back into the abbey for another day at work. Whether the stories are true or not, who knows? But you can see why people flocked from miles around to hear him speak. "20 years later, and Cuthbert finally became Bishop of Lindisfarne, and it was his destiny. For the next 12 months, he was a man on a mission. He could be found over in Carlisle to the west, and also at Eforwick, York to you and me in the east. In an age before mechanised travel, that really is a Herculean achievement covering that sort of distance. But you could still, though, always find him on his island just off Lindisfarne, caring for the eider ducks and praying. As Christmas approached in 686, Cuthbert must have known his time was drawing near. He retired as bishop and moved to Innerfarne, another island south of Lindisfarne. He died 4 months later. Cuthbert's work helped empower a golden age for the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms that now ruled all of Britannia. This was the era that would spawn the world-famous burials at Sutton Hoo and lay the groundwork for the foundation of the English nation. But for that to coalesce, an enemy more fearsome than you can possibly imagine would have to threaten the very existence of everything Cuthbert and Aidan stood for. This was the dawn of the Viking Age. They would arrive over that horizon, they would sail straight down this coast, and they would land on the beach just outside the monastery. This is an absolutely outstanding tale, and it's one that we will delve into when I see you next time. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time with more of my story of Holy Island. In this episode of the series, we're going to chart the rise and fall of one of history's most enigmatic peoples. It was, of course, the Vikings. They sailed straight past at this point, en route to the beach just outside the monastery. The monks were about to feel the full force of a ferocious seaborne attack. The violence which struck Lindisfarne in 793 was just the start of a series of raids all over the north of England, Scotland and Ireland. This actually gave rise to the man who would lead the charge of resistance against the Viking hordes, King Alfred the Great.
What a start! The series is underway. Oh yes.
Did you like it?
We hope so much that you did, because we had the most wonderful time working so close together, filming. You know, all 5 episodes, and this is the first series since pre-COVID where Kay will actually make an appearance in one of our historical location shoots. That's coming up later on in the series. It's more than briefly. More than briefly. It's very exciting. So yes, it is the most spectacular place with a totally amazing story, and it's going to be so exciting to sort of, we've started there with the very early days, and by the time we get to episode 5 we're going to get right up to present day. First time we've ever done a story quite like this, where we cover such a, you know, an expanse of time, but there's so many sort of cool and interesting things going on right the way through the periods of history. It's just been the business to make. So looking forward to episode 2 and the arrival of the Vikings.
Very exciting.
Oh yes, it is very exciting. So next time you will be thrilled to know that after a mid-season break, Kay is back with another episode of My Perfect Socks.
Gosh, wow, yes I am.
I know, how exciting.
That'll be cool, won't it?
First time ever that Kay's like had a break mid-season and
got out of the habit. I'll need to pull that project out and get on that. Yes.
Yes, it's going to be like super exciting. You know, even I'm looking forward to the return of My Perfect Socks. Yeah. So that's coming next time.
Oh, I could dye some yellows up while I've got my dye pot out.
Yes. Yes. And the second episode of The Story of Holy Island is coming your way on the 1st of August.
Lovely.
Right now it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits!
As mentioned earlier, our summer of stitching is well and truly underway. In June, Kay shared the 100 Acre Blanket series, which included the Pattern and 5 tutorials, still available and always will be for our patrons to go and watch. But right now, this month, it's the bag making.
Yeah.
Episode 1, as you've already seen, is out. Episode 2 is coming on the 8th of July. And then in August, it's slow stitching.
Slow stitching in August.
How exciting.
I'll maybe show you that next time, what we're going to be making. Our patrons have seen a kind of idea of what it is.
Right.
But I'll show you that next time, actually. Yeah.
We, of course, have content every Tuesday and Thursday anyway for our Bakery Bear patrons, whether it's Summer of Stitching or not. And as part of that, we produce a number of different series. Design Diary, Kay mentioned earlier, but also Self-Contained Knitter. There was a space for Self-Contained Knitter last month because of the the wonderful series, the 100 Egg Blanket series. So there's actually an episode of Self-Contained Knitted at the start of this month and at the end to squeeze it in to make sure that the series continues, because people seem to love it.
Yeah.
And I actually speak a little bit in this about how stunned I was and still am that people want to watch me talk about knitting.
You must have really interesting stuff to say. I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Neither can I. It's very strange. But yeah, Self-Contained Knitted, brand new episode, came out yesterday. Kay's got some yarn to show you and some socks to show you.
Yes, so I bought a couple of skeins of yarn. I'll show you those in a second. But I wanted to give you an update on the Wonder Socks. So that's this design, if you remember, from a couple of episodes back. These socks have been in test knitting for a little while. And it's largely through test knitting now. I had quite a high number of testers. I think I had about 15 or 16. So it's taken a little bit of time to get through. And I think I'm still waiting for a couple. But largely it's through. And it's allowed me to make a decision on what I'm going to do. I'm so glad that I went through the process of having a lot of test knitters for these. Because it was just that sort of pattern. Because of this stitch pattern, this chevron-y stitch pattern is notorious for pulling the fabric in. And that's why I wanted a high number of testers, because I wanted to get feedback on a load of different knitters who all knit different methods, different gauges, all of that sort of thing, different fits, different sizes. And overall, it's been a mixed result. I had quite a lot of people that said they got a good fit, quite a lot that said they were on the tight side. The majority of people who got a tight fit, I want to sing a song.
Stay on topic.
Sorry.
Stay on topic, Kay. Stay on topic.
Don't sing in the jungle. No, the majority of people who got that tighter fit knit the size small. I've lost it now. All I'm going to say about the feedback is it was a mixed results, and what that has meant for me is that because, first of all, nobody got a pair of socks that was unwearable, let's say. So that was good. However, for me to put a pattern out as a paid for pattern, I need to be confident that it's going to be a good fit, as much as I can, a good fit for everyone. I can't be confident with this design that it would be a good fit for everyone. So I'm not putting this out as a paid for pattern. However,
we've had loads of patrons ask about
this.
I've
had loads of patrons ask about this, and they're saying, I really love to knit that. And the feedback actually I got from a lot of the testers was that they loved it. They would knit it over and over again with self-striping yarn. So what I've decided to do is these are going to be the March design in my Platinum collection for next year.
Exciting.
So patrons that have access to the Platinum collection will be able to get this pattern next March.
Cool.
So if you are not a patron and you're really disappointed that I'm not putting this pattern out, then I would suggest that you consider signing up to be a patron in the spring next year so you can get this pattern.
Because you won't just get that pattern, you'll get the last 4 patterns.
Yeah, absolutely would. Yeah, so it'd be really good value for money and
be pretty much half price.
So, and at the end of the day, I've got a lovely pair of socks. My testers largely that knit it, I've got lovely pairs of socks. What I am going to do, following the feedback, I've gathered all the notes. I've made notes of what everybody's told me. I am going to put in a lot of information into the pattern about the fit and giving people suggestions about what they can do if it's working up a bit tight. So there are, there's lots of things you can do to get a successful pair of socks if you find it isn't working up tight. So I am going to add extra notes in so that I've covered all the bases I can cover and just made people aware that they need to take a bit of care and maybe just think a little bit more about the needle size, the size of sock they're knitting, the type of yarn base that they knit with, because that makes a difference too. All of those notes will be going into the pattern, and the Wonder Socks will be going out next March as a Platinum design. Okay, so I bought a couple of skeins of yarn recently, and these happen to be self-striping as well. I must be in a self-striping mode. I saw Stacey at Moustache put up a picture of this colourway knitted up recently, and I just loved it. It was so fun. And I haven't bought any of Stacey's yarn for a while. I really like her Star Wars themed yarns, and I've got quite a lot of those in my stash. But I saw this one, and I thought, oh, Bryony would love that in socks. So I picked up a skein of this. I had to pre-order it, but I didn't wait too long, I don't think, a couple of weeks until it was dispatched. And it's called Get Lucky. It's so pretty. It knits up with like thick bands of green, and then there's a section that's like kind of all rainbowy. Oh, it's really, really pretty. And Bryony likes that song called... Is there a song called Get Lucky? Yeah, she really likes that song, so that's what it made me think of too. So I bought one of those. And then I've joined Freckled Whimsy. She's got a club running through this year. It's not... I don't think it's a particularly themed club. It's just self-striping club. It's not under a theme as far as I'm aware. But she opened up some spots, so I grabbed one of those because I really like her yarn. Carrie's yarn, and I got this one. So this is it's a mystery thing, but I'm in the UK and she's in America, so I'm guessing I would have been one of the last people to get this anyway. But it was the July self-striping, so I would imagine it would have gone out earlier in June, and most people have got this, and it's called Puddle Jumping. It's really pretty. It sort of reminds me, this is what this one looks like. When I opened it up, it gave me a sort of Detroit Lions vibe for some reason. Yeah. So maybe I will knit socks for Dan out of this. Puddle Jumping, it's called. Really lovely.
Cool.
So I've got that too.
And with that, that's it. So thank you so much for watching. So much fun we've had this time.
Such a lot happened today.
Oh yes, brand new historical adventure series, but way more exciting is the gorgeous crochet jelly roll. So watch this space. It will be appearing before your eyes before you know it.
Show it again next time because it's all I want to work on. So yeah.
So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time with more from My Perfect Socks.
See you soon, everybody. Bye.
Flint cutters and scrapers have been found in considerable quality.
I've done a fair bit of crochet since then.
Much hooking has taken... Oh no, can't say that.
For St Cuthbert's beads, they can be found.
So yeah, but I have.
Whether the stories are true or not. Whether the stories are true or not.
Did you see that bird?
No, what was it?
There was a dove, a collared dove, just landed.
Nailed it. He was extremely disrepute. Pretty much out of the island which it had been destroyed in. That's rubbish.